There's one thing that always surprises foreign people when they start learning Dutch or curse words. Now, of course, every language has plenty of them. We also have plenty of them, and we all know that curse words are the first essential part to learning a new language. Now, the difference to a lot of curse words in other countries versus the Dutch curse words are diseases. We are really fond of cursing with diseases. It's bad. All of them, from tuberculosis to the plague to typhus to cancer, you name it, we got it. I was kind of curious as to why we curse that much with diseases, so I decided to do some digging and some research, and you will discover exactly why we curse that much with diseases in the Dutch language in this video. So some little examples of our curse words are, I have my laptop in front of me, so there are many. So like I said, the plague, typhus, cholera, scabies, tuberculosis, smallpox, cancer, and so on. So you have teringleier, typhuszooi, ettenbijl, klerenleier, pest pleuris, but those are just the small ones. Those are not very harsh. Let's just put it that way. So it seems like it especially started in the north of the Netherlands and then it slowly spread to the middle and to the south. Also, one of the oldest curse words that we still have in the Netherlands is belhamel, and this one dates back to the 17th century. But belhamel nowadays, for me personally, belhamel is something that a very posh and rich person would say to, teenage kids that are ringing their bells or whatever. I don't take it seriously, belhamel. So what is the history of cursing in the Netherlands? So Dutch people have always loved to curse. It was that bad that we actually were called botmuilen or rude mouths in the 17th century. It was our nickname. Not much has changed. Apparently we were also very proud of it. So according to Neerlandicus Mark van Oosterdorp, which is basically a person that researches the Dutch language, he says that we never had a culture of gallantry, and it is said that we were proud of it too. So the bourgeoisie got rich from the Dutch East India Company and trading, and there were different groups of elite, but a big part also existed out of people that weren't that rich in the beginning. And they suddenly became extremely rich. And before that they were doing okay, but nothing crazy. But bad manners were found all throughout Dutch society, and still are obviously. But we made a killing during the Dutch Golden Age, so we didn't have to adapt these bad manners. So is cursing with diseases uniquely Dutch? People seem to think so, but that's not the case. Polish, Yiddish, Hungarian, Korean, and more languages also offend others by wishing diseases onto them. However, some of those languages and the diseases that they use to curse people, it's old-fashioned or not really used that much nowadays. So I think in the Netherlands it's very prevalent. So perhaps we're one of the only countries, I don't know. But yeah, when I published another video about cursing with diseases, some people were like, actually we don't curse that much with diseases in this language. So. And also Shakespeare used some of those words in Romeo and Juliet to wish diseases on them, when Mercutio says that he wishes the bystanders a plague on both your houses. Now you can imagine that, especially at that time, it wasn't the kindest thing to say to someone. But yeah, so while Shakespeare also used it in English, that doesn't mean that the English use a lot of diseases when they're cursing, because they tend to not really. What are the reasons for cursing that much in the Dutch language and in the Netherlands? So generally speaking, when people curse, they curse with things that are, a taboo subject or, sensitive, from diseases to religion. And it's only a good curse word if you can shock people with it. The word needs to have a certain sweet spot, and I guess we have a lot of sweet spots for the curse words with diseases. So some say that the reason that the Dutch curse a lot with diseases is because it is very influenced by Yiddish, because Amsterdam was a haven for Jewish people, and in Yiddish people curse a lot with diseases, so they say that then the phenomenon spread. However, others disagree with the idea, since the oldest Dutch curse word with the disease dates back to the 16th century, which was way before Yiddish became prevalent in Amsterdam. But also, Yiddish was mainly prevalent in Amsterdam, so it wouldn't make any sense that it then spread throughout the entire north of the country and then to the middle and to the south. And also in Yiddish, the curse words often refer to typical Jewish customs, and obviously a lot of Dutch people are not Jewish, so it also doesn't make that much sense that all of these curse words with diseases come from Yiddish. But there's another theory, and it is Calvinism and the associated idea of predestination. So according to that, God decides the way your life works out, and it sees diseases as a punishment and curse for God for sinners. So if you end up getting sick, it's your own fault. So obviously that makes it incredibly offensive to curse someone with. So in Dutch, people often say krijg de, which translates to get the, and then, the disease comes after. And what is interesting in that sentence is that it's mostly seen in Calvinistic areas in the Netherlands since the 16th century. So essentially saying get the typhus or get the cholera means that you don't want that person to be blessed by God. And when you're living in a very religious society, that is one of the worst offenses one could say. So that's not a theory and it makes sense. However, it doesn't completely clear up as to why not all Calvinist areas in the Netherlands were cursing with diseases. So others actually think that our excess of cursing with diseases actually has to do with secularism. Secularism. I looked it up. I cannot remember it. Basically, when religion does not get as important to society anymore as before. You know what I mean. So Nicoline van der Sijs, who is a researcher for the Institute of Dutch Language and a professor of historical linguistics, found something interesting. Nicoline researched swear words in notarial acts in Amsterdam between the 16th and 18th century. And you might think that going to the notary, over some curse words is a bit over the top, I agree. However, we're not living in the 16th, 17th, or 18th century. So the notary wrote down the curses to record that someone had been treated badly, and usually the counterparty would apologize and then the conflict was done. Most curse words that were found in these notarial acts were relatively small compared to those that we have nowadays. So you would often see someone curse with rottige hoer. Rottig at that time meant you had an STD, and hoer means whore, prostitute. Other diseases that people would often curse with were scabies, so think of schurftkop or scab head, but that's about it. So according to research of Nicoline, cursing with diseases started to become really popular in the 19th century when faith slowly lost its meaning. And that is when people changed their curse words from religious to non-religious swear words and curses. So it is said that the taboo on disease in a Calvinist society was so big that curse words with diseases weren't that popular, so it only came after. And another researcher also thinks that this plays a big role. So what is needed for a good Dutch curse word? Linguists agree that sounds like P, T and K work really well in Dutch curse words. The tones and sounds of the letters work really good with aggression, so sl, sm and fl also work really good. So it is possible that these sounds, and in other curse words the lack of these specific sounds, are the reason as to why some diseases stick and others quickly disappear. It's impossible to know how many curse words with diseases are exactly in the Dutch language because we have a lot. But yeah, single curse words are often expanded and other taboos are added, so you can make them more impactful. For instance, you can call someone a hoer or whore, prostitute, sex worker, but then the root word for it, or Mongol, but then you make it tyfushoer or kankermongol, so typhus, sex worker, and cancer, crazy person. It definitely adds an extra level, and when you add even more words, because it's never ending, it's even more impactful. So how are Dutch people cursing with disease today? We still do it a lot. One that is extremely popular nowadays that I personally don't use because I think it's too rude and because people that have been affected by the disease is the word cancer. It's, for me, that's too much. It's too, no. What's also interesting is that we also tend to export it. Because in Antwerp, for instance, there are a lot of Dutch students and there's this kind of hotspot, according to research, that more and more people start to curse with diseases there as well because of the influence of Dutch students. But yeah, also we have social media, so kids, teens, everyone can see anything. So some people think that one of the reasons we still curse so much with disease nowadays is because barely anyone falls ill with disease like cholera or tuberculosis. And that is probably also the reason why we now use some diseases for both positive and negative meanings and connotations. So you can say tering mooi, which translates to tuberculosis beautiful, which means something is extremely beautiful or someone. But yeah, that doesn't entirely add up because, like I said, a lot of Dutch people curse with cancer nowadays, and a lot of people usually know someone that has had or has the disease or has passed away. It also looks like some of the words simply lost their original meaning and got a new one. Like I said, today we're still very known to use diseases in the Netherlands, and a lot of them are historical diseases. But yeah, this current one, the most popular one, seems to be cancer nowadays, or kanker. So in the early days, people would describe the disease as K. This wasn't used as a curse word, but it was just people were afraid to mention the disease. And this is a disease that affects 1 in 3 Dutch people and kills too many people each year. And of course, cursing with cholera or typhus or tuberculosis is not that shocking anymore because we have cures and barely anyone is nowadays affected by it. Cancer is a different story. A lot of people are affected by it. So, like I said, personally for me, I never use it. I think it's rude. Not everyone thinks that is the case. I tend to see it a lot with teens as well, young adults, but also with older people. So I don't know why. Research shows that Dutch people think that curse words with kanker or cancer are the rudest ones. You will still hear it a lot. And it has gotten so bad that there are organizations that actively fight against the use of the word kanker in Dutch society. So they are trying to educate young people one-on-one. But yeah, young adults also know that it's a terrible disease, but that it's such a nice word to pronounce. And for many of them, it is a word without meaning. So they know about the disease, but they usually do not have any experiences with it, which is why they will still keep on using it. There has been a campaign against cursing in Australia, other side of the world obviously, which is said to have resulted in 70% less cursing. I'm not entirely sure if that's very true, but perhaps I'm just biased because I know that Australians curse a lot. So, but yeah, perhaps that's something we can implement here. What do you think? Would it help? I know. What are some of the most common curse words that you would use in your country? Are they religious, something with diseases, something completely else? Let me know. I'm curious.